My name is Ember Atwood. I am 34 years old. 3 weeks ago my mother stood in front of 60 people at my grandmother's 90th birthday party and tried to erase me with a joke. She gave my sister a diamond ring. She gave my brother a gold watch. And she gave me an empty jewelry box. The room laughed. Not everyone. But enough. Enough for me to hear it. Enough for my mother Judith to smile like she had finally proved something in public that she had been trying to prove in private for 34 years. That I was less. That I was always going to be less. That I should sit there and take it. And I almost broke right there at the table. I almost gave her exactly what she wanted. Then I felt my grandmother's hand under the table. 90 years old. Thin fingers. A slight tremble. Still steadier than anyone else in that room. She pressed a folded piece of paper into my palm. 7 words in blue ink. 7 words that blew a hole straight through every lie my mother had built around me since I was 22. I did not know it yet. But by the time that night was over my mother had already lost everything she cared about most. Not her house. Not her money. Not even her pride. She lost control of the story. And in my family that was the one thing nobody ever took from Judith Atwood. Until my grandmother did. Before I tell you what those 7 words said, I want to ask you something simple. If you love long storytelling videos about family secrets, betrayal, quiet revenge, and endings that hit you right in the chest, then like this video right now and subscribe before you forget. And tell me where you are watching from and what your local time is when this story finds you. I read those comments. I really do. And if you stay with me to the end, I want you to tell me one more thing. Whether you think my grandmother saved me too late or at exactly the right time. Now let me take you back 3 weeks before that party. Back to the day my mother smiled at me. And I knew something was wrong. I live in Millbrook. Small town. 1 traffic light. 2 diners. 0 pretense. The kind of place where people still slow down when they pass a cemetery and everyone knows which family owns which field. I am a landscape architect. I run my business alone out of a rented studio apartment with a drafting table jammed between the kitchen sink and the window and boxes of soil samples stacked beside the bathroom door. By my family's standards, I am a disappointment. Not married. No children. No country club membership. No respectable husband with a sensible title. No neat little life that looks good in a Christmas card. What I do have is something I built myself. Clients who come back. Bills I pay on time. Work that came from my own hands and my own stubbornness. That matters to me. It never mattered to Judith. My mother believes in one thing above everything else. Control. Not love. Not truth. Not fairness. Control. She decides who belongs in the family and who does not. She sets the Thanksgiving seating chart. She picks the people who make it into the Christmas Eve photos. She decides which cousins get included in the family texts, and which ones find out about things later through Facebook. If Judith says you are in, then everyone acts like you are in. If Judith says you are difficult or selfish or dramatic, then the rest of the family slowly starts repeating it until one day it sounds like fact. I have been out since I was 22. My sister Paige is 37. Recently engaged. Blonde in that polished expensive way that somehow survives rain and wind and sleep. She calls our mother every morning. Brings flowers every Sunday. Posts captions like family first and blessed beyond measure and so grateful for the women who taught me everything. She is the golden child. She has been the golden child for so long I think even she believes that is just another word for normal. My brother Grant is 31. He carries the Atwood name, and in my mother's mind that makes him important almost by default. Grant is not cruel. That would almost be easier. Cruel people at least admit they are involved. Grant is silent. He never starts trouble. He never stops it either. He drifts above the damage and somehow that has always protected him. Then there is me. Every Saturday for the last 12 years, I have driven almost 4 hours round trip to see my grandmother Dorothy Harmon. I mow her lawn in summer. I clear her walk in winter. I fix fence posts that rot every spring. I change smoke detector batteries. I clean gutters. I patch screens. I sit on her porch and drink sweet tea and listen to stories about the grandfather I never met, and the farm she grew up on, and the war years, and the Depression, and the first time she ever saw New York City, and thought the buildings looked fake because they were too tall to be real. But in my mother's version I only visit Dorothy because I want her money. That is the story Judith tells. That is the story people believe. Ember only goes out there because she wants the house. Ember only helps because she is calculating. Ember is trying to turn Grandma against the family. People love a clean story. Especially when the truth is messy and asks more of them. Everyone believed it. Everyone except Dorothy. The shift happened when I was 22. Fresh out of college. New job. New apartment. Still dumb enough to believe honesty could survive in my family if you said it calmly enough. I stopped by my mother's house one afternoon to drop off a birthday card. She was not in the kitchen, but her purse was on the counter, and beside it was a bank statement. I should have looked away. I know that. But one name caught my eye. Dorothy Harmon. My grandmother's account. Joint with Judith Atwood. 3 withdrawals. 2 months. $15,000. And the memo lines were not vague. Kitchen remodel. Appliance upgrade. Contractor deposit. My grandmother was not remodeling her kitchen. My mother was. When Judith came into the room, I asked a simple question. Mom, does Grandma know you are taking money from her account? That was it. No yelling. No accusation. No sermon. Just a question. Her face changed so fast it still lives in my mind frame by frame. First white. Then red. Then hard. You do not question your mother, Ember. I said I am not questioning you. I am asking you. She stepped closer. You certainly do not audit me. I said if Grandma approved then just say that. And something in her eyes turned cold in a way I had never seen before. That was the last honest conversation we ever had. Within a week I became the difficult one. Judith told Paige I was jealous. She told Grant I was trying to stir things up. She told cousins I was unstable and obsessed with money. She told church friends I had always had a chip on my shoulder. She did not need to invent much. She only needed to arrange details in the right order. That is what my mother does best. She does not create lies out of thin air. She builds them out of angles and omissions and tone until other people do the rest. The labels stuck because labels are efficient. And because nobody wants to work hard enough to see through them. What I did not know then was that Dorothy saw all of it. She saw the withdrawals. She saw the sudden cooling in the family. She saw how fast Judith punished anyone who questioned her. She saw her own daughter isolate the one grandchild who still showed up without being asked. And then in 2013 Dorothy found something worse. Judith had quietly added her own name to the deed of the Harmon family house as joint tenant. If Dorothy died, the house would pass straight to Judith outside of probate. No will contest. No questions. No chance for anyone to stop it. My grandmother never raised her voice when she told me that part later. She did not need to. Dorothy was the kind of woman whose anger went quiet before it became dangerous. That September she called a lawyer. Thomas Calloway. And what she built with him over the next 12 years would stay hidden from me until the night my mother handed me an empty box and thought the story was over. 3 months before the party, Judith called me on a Tuesday evening. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. It was the kind of sweetness she uses when she wants help from someone she plans to insult later. Ember, I am putting together Mom's 90th birthday celebration at Briarwood Country Club. It is going to be beautiful. We are doing a catered dinner and a slideshow, and a little legacy presentation at the end. I need you to handle Flowers, the DJ, and the slideshow because you are good at details. Paige and I will take care of the program and seating and speeches. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone, and looking at a tray of seedling samples on the counter. Am I giving a speech? A pause. Then that voice. Honey, we really want to keep the speaking part to the people closest to her. Closest. I almost laughed. I am the one who drives to Dorothy every Saturday. I am the one who knows where she keeps the spare flashlight, and which floorboard by the pantry squeaks, and how much sugar she takes in her tea, and where she hid Christmas cash in coffee tins when I was a kid. But sure. Not close. I said okay. Then I called Dorothy. Grandma, did Mom tell you she is planning a huge birthday party? I heard. You okay with it? Come to the party, baby. That is all I need from you. There was something in her voice then that made me sit down. Not fear. Not confusion. Certainty. Like she had already seen the ending of a movie everyone else was still guessing at. I almost asked more. I should have. But with Dorothy you learned something early. When she wanted you to know something she would tell you in her own time. Press too hard and she would just fold inward and wait you out. So I let it go. For a few days. Then Friday happened. I called Paige about the florist. She did not answer. The call rolled to voicemail, but it picked up late, and for about 5 seconds before the beep I heard voices in the background. Paige's voice. Then Brandon's. Then Paige again. Mom is doing the jewelry thing at the party. It is going to be so good. Brandon laughed. Then Paige's voice lower. She finally gets what she deserves. Nothing. Then the beep. I stood there in my apartment with my mouth open and the phone still against my ear. I saved the voicemail. At the time I told myself I was saving it because it might matter later. Truthfully, I saved it because hearing your worst fear said out loud does something to you. It makes it real in a way you cannot talk yourself around. 2 weeks before the party, Dorothy asked me to drive her to an appointment. Tuesday morning. Usual time. I assumed doctor. But halfway down Route 9 she tapped the dashboard and told me to turn right instead of left. First National Bank. Main Street. I parked near the curb. She got out steady with her cane, more for balance than need, and walked inside. She asked for a particular bank officer by name. He came out almost immediately. Smiled like he knew her well. Led her into a private office. I sat in the lobby pretending to read a magazine about lake houses I would never own. 15 minutes later she came back out. No folder. No envelope. No obvious paperwork. Just the same calm face she always wore when she had decided something, and did not intend to discuss it until she was ready. When we got to the car she took my hand and placed something cold in my palm. A brass key. Small. Flat. Numbers stamped on it. Safety deposit box. Keep this in your purse just in case. In case of what? She looked at me then. Really looked. In case you ever need to open what is yours. I wanted to ask 10 questions. What is in the box? Why me? Why now? What is happening? But she had already turned to fasten her seat belt, and I knew that expression. She was done speaking for the moment. On the drive home she pointed out the Hendersons' new mailbox, and asked how business was, and hummed along to Patsy Cline like nothing unusual had happened. Then at a stoplight she went quiet and said something that stayed with me all the way to the party. "You remind me of your grandfather. He never cared about shiny things either." I smiled like she was being sentimental. She was not. She was leaving me a breadcrumb. A week later I went to my mother's house for what she called a logistics meeting. Judith had the dining table covered in seating charts and sample menus, and place card drafts, like she was planning a state dinner. Paige sat beside her scrolling fonts for the program. Grant leaned against the counter eating grapes one at a time, like this had nothing to do with him. Judith handed me a printed timeline. Cocktail hour. Opening remarks. Dinner. Slideshow. Then she tapped the bottom of the page with one manicured nail. Then the jewelry presentation. I looked up. Presentation. She smiled. Mom asked me to divide a few of her heirloom pieces among the family. It felt right to do it while everyone is together. Something cold moved through me. Which pieces? The diamond engagement ring will go to Paige. Since she is building a family. Since it symbolizes commitment. And the gold pocket watch will go to Grant. Since he carries the Atwood name forward. Then she looked straight at me. And for you, sweetheart, I have something special. Paige covered her mouth. Not in shock. To hide a grin. What is it? It's a surprise. I looked at Grant. He kept chewing grapes. Judith stepped out to take a phone call, and I started gathering my papers. Paige leaned toward me across the table. You should be grateful Mom is including you at all. I stopped. Including me at all. She shrugged. Most people in your position would not even get invited. My position. Not difficult. Not greedy. Not selfish. My position. Like rank. Like caste. Like everyone in that room understood there was an order to our family, and I should know my place in it. I said nothing. I just put my folder in my bag and walked out. No one stopped me. That evening I drove straight to Dorothy's house. She was on the porch where she always is when the weather is good. Rocking chair. Wool blanket over her knees even though it was not cold. Iced tea on the rail. The sky turning that soft gold it gets right before evening settles in over the fields. I sat beside her and told her everything. The timeline. The jewelry. Paige's comment. Something special. Dorothy listened without interrupting. Hands folded. Face still. When I finished she did not look shocked. She said, I know. You know. Paige told me last week. She was bragging and forgot she was talking to me, not one of her friends. I stared at her. And you are okay with this? Your mother thinks she owns what was never hers. Grandma, what does that mean? She picked up her tea. Took one small sip. Set it down carefully. She has been playing with costume jewelry her whole life and calling it real. She just does not know it yet. My skin prickled. I leaned closer. What are you talking about? If anything happens at that party. Anything at all. Call Thomas Calloway. He has everything. Everything what? She reached over and took my hand. Promise me one thing first. What? Whatever your mother does. Do not react. I frowned. What do you mean do not react? I mean do not cry in front of her. Do not argue. Do not defend yourself. Do not give her a scene to stand in. Wait. Wait for what? For the truth to do its own work. We sat there until the lightning bugs came out over the grass and the sky turned deep blue. I kept glancing at her hoping she would say more. She did not. She only held my hand once and gave it one firm squeeze, as if sealing something between us. I drove home with the windows down and every nerve in my body buzzing. That is when it finally hit me. This was not about jewelry. Not really. The jewelry was just the prop. The real point was public humiliation. My mother had spent 12 years building a version of me that made her look righteous. Difficult daughter. Suspicious daughter. Ungrateful daughter. Greedy daughter. The party was going to be her final chapter in front of a live audience. The others get treasures. Ember gets nothing. Why? Because material things do not matter to her. Because she is above such things. Because she does not deserve them anyway. Because look how graciously she accepts her place. If I smiled and sat there and took it, then I would be helping Judith finish the job. I would be co-signing my own erasure in front of 60 people. And there was another piece to it. For months Judith had been trying to limit my access to Dorothy. Grandma is tired this weekend. Maybe skip this Saturday. She needs rest. Space it out a little. Each excuse sounded reasonable alone. Together they formed a wall. If the party went the way Judith wanted, then she would have exactly what she needed to complete that wall. Public proof. Social proof. Look how Ember behaved. Look how obsessed she is. Look how she still keeps showing up after getting nothing. Must be about money. I almost decided not to go. Almost. But Dorothy asked me to come. And I keep my promises. The day of the party arrived like a sentence already handed down. Briarwood Country Club looked exactly the way people with too much money think important memories should look. White tablecloths. Soft lighting. Oversized floral centerpieces that I had ordered and designed but nobody credited me for. A rented projector cycling through photos of Dorothy from childhood to widowhood. Ella Fitzgerald playing under the chatter because I had timed the slideshow to her favorite songs. 63 guests. I counted because when I am anxious I count things. 2 long family tables. Friends from church. Neighbors from Maple Lane. Country club people who knew Judith better than Dorothy. Brandon's parents near the front. Cousins I only see at funerals and Christmas. Aunts with reading glasses hanging on chains. Men in blazers they only wear to weddings and court. Judith arrived last in a black dress with pearl earrings, and the kind of smile that expects admiration before anyone has spoken. People swarmed her. This is gorgeous Judith. You did such a beautiful job. What a wonderful daughter. She touched her collarbone and said family is everything. I was at the back adjusting a centerpiece that did not need adjusting because I could not trust my own face. Then Dorothy came in. Sage green dress. Pearl pin at the collar. Back straight. Eyes sharp. 90 years old and somehow the most solid person in the room. She entered on Uncle Phil's arm, but she did not lean on him. Not really. She walked like a woman choosing her steps, not like one who needed help making them. She looked across the room and found me immediately. Small nod. Just once. I nodded back. Dinner came and went in courses and speeches and little bursts of applause. Judith gave opening remarks about legacy and love and sacrifice with the kind of polished emotion that always sounds practiced when it comes from her. Paige cried at exactly the right moments. Grant smiled on cue. People laughed when they were supposed to. The slideshow played and for a few minutes it almost felt like a real celebration. Then the plates were cleared. Judith took the microphone again. And I saw the 3 velvet boxes on the small table by the podium. 2 of them were new. Wrapped in ivory ribbon. The third looked older. Slightly scuffed. No ribbon. It sat a few inches away from the other 2, like even on the table it was already excluded. Judith began speaking about legacy. About family values. About carrying things forward. Then she said the word deserves. Not once. Twice. The room leaned in. I looked at Dorothy. She had gone very still. Hands folded. Face unreadable. Eyes not on Judith. On me. Paige was first. Judith opened the box and lifted the ring under the chandelier light. It threw tiny sparks over the tablecloths, and everyone made that same breathy sound people make when something expensive appears in a room. Because you are building a family, Paige. Because commitment matters. Because this is what your grandmother would want. Paige stood. Tears running. Hugged Judith. Cameras lifted. Brandon smiled like he had married into nobility. Applause. Long. Warm. Then Grant. The pocket watch looked heavy in its velvet case. Grant, because you carry the Atwood name. Legacy needs a keeper. He stood. Took the watch. Held it up. More applause. Then the room changed. People started looking for the third box. For me. You could feel the shift travel table to table. That little electric current humans create when they know something awkward is about to happen and are ashamed of how curious they are. Judith lifted the last box. Not from the table with the others. From a little farther back. As if it needed to be separate. She did not call me to the front. No. She carried it herself across the room so everyone could watch the distance close. Every heel click sounded loud. Every head turned. She stopped beside my table and smiled down at me like a saint in stained glass. And for you, sweetheart. That voice. That public sweetness she only uses when she wants cruelty to look like grace. She placed the box in front of me. The room went quiet. I could hear ice in someone's water glass. I opened it. Empty. Not accidentally empty. Deliberately empty. The worn velvet inside still held the impression of where jewelry had once been. A space where a ring had rested. A shaped hollow where a watch had lain. Ghost marks. Memory marks. Proof that emptiness was the point. Then it happened. A few people laughed. Small, ugly laughs. The kind that burst out before decency catches up. Someone at the back gave a low whistle. A woman near Brandon's parents covered her mouth. Paige looked down. Grant reached for his water. Judith just stood there shining. My face burned. My throat locked. My hands started to shake so hard, I thought the box might rattle in my lap. Every instinct I had screamed at me to stand up. To say something. To ask her how long she had practiced that moment in her head. To ask how rotten a person had to be to turn her mother's birthday into an execution. To ask the room if they were proud of themselves for watching. Then I felt a hand under the table. Dorothy. Thin warm fingers folding over mine. She pressed something into my palm. A tiny folded piece of paper. I closed my hand around it. And because I had promised her. Because she had asked me with that steady quiet voice on the porch. Because somewhere in the middle of all that humiliation, I suddenly knew she had been waiting for this exact second. I looked up at my mother and said only 2 words. Thank you, Mom. Flat. Steady. No tears. No scene. Just enough to let her know I would not give her the ending she had written. Something flickered in Judith's face. Just for a moment. Disappointment. The room exhaled. A fork scraped a plate. Someone coughed. The DJ started the next song too early, like he wanted to rescue the air, and had no idea how. I stood. Excused myself. And walked out with the empty box still in my hands. The hallway to the restroom was too long. Carpeted. Quiet. Smelled faintly like lilies and furniture polish and someone else's expensive perfume. I could feel my heartbeat in my neck. In my wrists. In my teeth. I got inside the restroom. Locked the door. Set the box on the counter. Then I opened my hand. The note was folded twice. Torn from the corner of a legal pad. Dorothy's handwriting in blue ink. Steady letters. Clean. Not one shaky line. 7 words. Everything real is already in your name. Below that a phone number. And 1 word. Calloway. I read it once. Then again. Then a 3rd time because my brain would not accept what my eyes were telling it. Everything real is already in your name. Real. Not the ring. Not the watch. Not the display. Already. Not soon. Not maybe. Not if. In your name. Mine. My knees almost gave out. I sat on the closed toilet lid with the note pressed to my chest and stared at the empty box on the counter while Fly Me to the Moon started playing faintly through the wall from the ballroom outside. That is the thing I need you to understand about that moment. The note did not explain everything. Not yet. It only cracked the world open. Enough for light to get in. Enough for me to realize my grandmother had not been sitting quietly all these years because she was powerless. She had been sitting quietly because she was working. I washed my face. Folded the note again. Tucked it behind my license in my wallet. Picked up the box. Went back out. When I walked back into that ballroom, Dorothy was watching the doorway. Not smiling. Not winking. Just watching me with the calm of someone who knows the bridge will hold because she built it herself. I sat down at table 6. A cousin leaned over and whispered, "Are you okay?" I smiled. "I am fine. It is Grandma's night." Across the room, Judith kept looking at me. Waiting. She had planned the whole evening around my reaction, and now the reaction would not come. It unsettled her more than anger would have. She cornered me near the dessert table later. "You are handling this well, Ember." "There is nothing to handle, Mom. I just want you to know it was not personal." "Of course not." Her eyes narrowed at that. She wanted resistance. Resistance gives her shape. Without it, she has nothing to push against. Aunt Margie found me by the coat room. She is Dorothy's younger sister. 78. Sharp as wire. Not sentimental. No patience for performance. "That was not right, Ember." She said it low. Like someone ashamed of her own family. "That was not right, and everyone in that room knows it." I said, "It is okay, Aunt Margie." "No, baby. It is not okay. But I think you know that already." At the end of the night, I found Dorothy back at her table after most people had gone for coats. She looked tired then. Not weak. Just tired. "You did good," she said. I held her gaze. "Whatever you have done, Grandma, I trust you." She gave one small nod. That drive home felt unreal. Route 9 at night is mostly darkness and headlights and tree lines and long stretches where you start hearing your own thoughts too loudly. For 20 minutes neither of us spoke. Then Dorothy said, "The box was empty, baby." It never was. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What did you do, Grandma?" "I did what I should have done years ago. The day your mother first made you cry at that dinner table. I made sure you would never need her again." That sentence broke something in me. Not because of money. Because of being seen. Because I had spent so long feeling like I was standing alone at the far edge of my family that hearing someone say "I saw it, and I moved to protect you" felt almost too big to bear. "Call Calloway on Monday morning," she said. "He will explain. And do not tell your mother anything." "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because the truth does not need an announcement. It only needs time." I helped her inside. Settled her in her chair. tucked the blanket over her knees, put her tea by the lamp. As I turned to leave, she caught my wrist. "You were always my favorite." I laughed through the sudden sting in my eyes. "Grandma, you are not supposed to say that out loud. Not because you were perfect. Because you were real." I made it to my car before I started crying. Not neat crying. Not movie crying. The kind that comes out in gasps because somebody finally said the sentence you needed 10 years ago, and now your body has to release all the nights you went without it. I did not sleep Saturday. Or Sunday. I lay in bed with the note in my wallet and the key in my purse, and the empty box on the chair across from me. Monday at 8:01 in the morning, I was already holding the phone when I dialed Thomas Calloway. 1 ring. 2. A woman answered. "Calloway and Associates. This is Ember Atwood. Dorothy Harmon is my grandmother. She told me to call." A pause. Then her tone changed. "Oh yes, Ms. Atwood. Mr. Calloway has been expecting you." Expecting. Not available later. Not let me take a message. Expecting. As if a chair had been waiting for me for years. "Can you come in at 2 today?" It was a 4-hour drive. I said yes before she finished the sentence. On the road my phone rang. "Judith." I stared at her name for a full second before answering. "Ember, we should talk about the party." Her voice was careful. Not apologetic. Careful. The voice of someone checking the walls after a tremor. "I think you handled it really well." "Thanks, Mom. I just want you to know it came from a place of love." The box was symbolic. "I know." That was all I said. A beat of silence. "We should do lunch sometime." "Sure. Talk later." I hung up. That was the last normal conversation Judith and I ever had. Calloway's office sat above a hardware store on Main Street in a brick building that smelled like old paper and coffee and rain that had dried into the walls 100 times. His secretary Louise offered me water. I took it because my hands were shaking and I needed them busy. Thomas Calloway came out himself. Mid-60s. Gray beard. Half-moon glasses pushed up on his forehead. The kind of man who looked like he had spent his whole life reading documents that changed families, and had learned to deliver big truths without drama. He shook my hand and led me into his office. On his desk was a thick folder. He sat down. Opened it. Looked at me over his glasses. "Your grandmother established an irrevocable trust in September of 2013. I blinked. I knew the words separately. Not together. He continued slowly. "I need you to understand what that means. Once the trust was created and funded, the assets placed inside it no longer belong to Dorothy personally. They belong to the trust. They are governed by the terms she set. Those terms are legally binding." I swallowed. "Who is the beneficiary?" He looked directly at me. "You are Ms. Atwood." The room tilted. I set the water down before I dropped it. Then he started walking me through it piece by piece. Not all at once. Piece by piece. The Harmon family house. 40 acres in Millbrook County. Deeded into the trust years ago. Appraised at $1.2 million as of the previous year. My mind snagged on one phrase. Years ago. He explained that Dorothy had discovered Judith's name on the deed. She had taken legal steps to remove it. Quietly. Properly. With full documentation. Then transferred the property into the trust before Judith realized she had lost her claim. Then the investment account. Different bank. Built slowly over 12 years. 300 here. 400 there. Pension money. Social Security money. Careful deposits. Conservative growth. Roughly 480,000. Then he paused before the last part. The original jewelry collection. Stored in a safety deposit box at First National. The key in my purse felt suddenly hot. He named the pieces. The real diamond engagement ring. The real gold pocket watch. A brooch. A pair of pearl earrings. Several smaller items. All authentic. All appraised. All preserved. Estimated total estate value under the trust with property and accounts and jewelry. Approximately 1.9 million. I sat there staring at him and thinking not about the number but about Dorothy. About her at 78 sitting in this exact office. Quietly moving mountains while I spent 12 years thinking all she could do was squeeze my hand under tables and tell me I mattered. Then Calloway said the sentence that snapped the whole party into focus. The items your mother distributed at the birthday party were reproductions. I stared. Reproductions. Yes. Your grandmother commissioned them in 2012. Before the trust was finalized. High quality but not genuine. Good enough for family theater. Not good enough for appraisal. I actually laughed then. Just one shocked breath of a laugh. My mother had built her grand performance around fake treasure. Judith had not just tried to humiliate me. She had humiliated herself in advance, and did not even know it. Why did Grandma do it that way, I asked. Why not just confront her? Why not tell everyone? Because she did confront her. Once. He told me about it. Dorothy sat Judith down in 2010, and told her plainly that the money withdrawals were unacceptable, and that how she was treating me was wrong. Judith told her she was getting old, and did not understand family dynamics anymore. After that Judith tightened her grip. Restricted visits. Controlled information. Played the concerned daughter. Dorothy realized something then that most people learn too late. You cannot reason with someone who needs control more than truth. If Dorothy fought publicly too early, she would lose access. Lose time. Lose the ability to move anything safely. Judith would retaliate before the protections were in place. So Dorothy chose patience. Legal patience. Strategic patience. She had her mental capacity evaluated by an independent physician when she set up the trust so no one could later claim confusion. She moved assets gradually. She documented everything. She kept quiet until quiet was no longer surrender but leverage. Then he said something I will never forget. She told me I cannot change my daughter. But I can make sure my granddaughter never needs her. That was the point where I covered my face with both hands, because there are some kinds of love too sharp to receive without folding. Then I asked the question that had been burning in me since the bathroom at Briarwood. Why did she not tell me sooner? He nodded like he had known I would ask. Because you would have confronted your mother. At 22. At 25. At 30. You would have tried to force the truth into daylight. Judith would have found a way to make a mess of it before it was safe. Dorothy knew that. She hated keeping it from you. She said if she regretted anything it was the loneliness it cost you. But she chose certainty over speed. He was right. At 22 I would have weaponized the truth out of pain. At 25 I would have demanded justice. At 30 I would have thrown the note in Judith's face and called it courage. Dorothy understood something I did not. Timing can be love. Before I left I told Calloway I did not want revenge. He listened. Then he slid a card across the desk. You may not need to seek revenge. The truth may surface on its own very quickly. Why? Your sister is newly engaged. If she takes that ring to be resized, a jeweler will identify the stone as cubic zirconia almost immediately. Same with the watch. Any competent repair professional will know it is gold-plated base metal. It is only a matter of time. How much time? He gave a small shrug. Days. Maybe weeks. Not long. I drove home with the windows down and the radio off. The empty box sat on the passenger seat. That is when I realized something strange. It was the first honest gift my mother had ever given me. Empty. Exactly what it appeared to be. No hidden love. No secret blessing. No conditions dressed up as care. Just emptiness. And because of what it led me to, it had become the most valuable object I owned. Now I want to ask you something, because this is where the story could have gone two ways. If you were me at this point, would you have done it? Would you have called your mother and told her you knew everything? Or would you have stayed silent and waited for the truth to walk into the light on its own? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know. And if you are still with me here, then hit like and subscribe, because this is exactly where the ground started moving under everyone who had laughed that night. It took 11 days. 11 quiet days. I did not make a single call. I did not tell Paige. I did not tell Grant. I did not confront Judith. I went to work. I met clients. I sketched plans. I drove to Dorothy's on Saturday. We drank tea on the porch and talked about tomatoes and drainage, and weather fronts, and not once did she ask whether I had told anyone. She knew I would keep my promise. Then on a Tuesday, Paige walked into Garrison and Daughter's fine jewelry on Elm Street with the ring on her finger, and a smile big enough to be seen through the front window. She wanted it resized. I know what happened there, because Claire Garrison told Aunt Margie, and Aunt Margie told Dorothy, and Dorothy told me, while pretending she was simply making conversation over pound cake. Claire took the ring. Put it under the loop. Adjusted the light. Looked again. Called over her associate. Both women studied it in silence that stretched too long to be casual. Then Claire looked up and said as gently as she could, "Miss, I want to be very straightforward with you. This is a very good reproduction. The center stone is cubic zirconia." Paige laughed first. That brittle shocked laugh people use when their brain refuses information. "That is impossible. It has been in my family for 60 years. I am sorry. It is not diamond." The color drained out of her face right there at the counter. She called Judith from inside the store. I was not there, but I can picture my mother's expression when Paige said the word fake. The same week, Grant took the watch to a horologist in the next town to have it cleaned. That man turned it over twice and told him it was gold-plated over base metal and worth maybe $40. 40. That number matters later. Because sometimes the exact price of a lie is almost poetic. My phone started ringing that afternoon, while I was at home drawing a planting plan for a client. Judith. Then Paige. Then Judith again. Then Judith again. Then Paige. 6 calls before I answered. Judith did not say hello. "What did you do?" "Nothing." "Do not lie to me." "Mom, I did not do anything." "You switched them. You have been going to that house every week for years. You took the real jewelry and left fakes." I closed my eyes. "Mom, you gave me an empty box. Remember?" Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "Do not play games with me. I am not. I did not switch anything. I did not know they were reproductions until you gave them away at the party." "That is a lie. Call Grandma then." The line went dead. 2 minutes later, Paige texted, "Is this true? Did you know?" I looked at it for a long time. I could have explained. I could have defended myself. I could have sent the voicemail, "She finally gets what she deserves." Nothing. I did not. I put the phone face down and sat on my couch staring at the wall, because I was not triumphant. I was tired. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes from being accused of the very thing someone else has been doing to you for years. It is not anger. Not exactly. It is heavier than that. The next morning Judith drove straight to Dorothy's house. Aunt Margie happened to be there with Uncle Phil. They had brought a casserole and stayed for coffee. Judith did not knock. She came through the front door like she still believed the house belonged to her. "Mother, did you give Ember the real jewelry?" Dorothy was in her rocking chair on the screened porch. She did not stand. Did not raise her voice. Did not blink. "I gave away what was mine to give. You distributed what you assumed was yours." "Those were family pieces," Judith said. "They were my pieces, Judith. I bought them. I wore them. I insured them. They were never yours to hand out." Aunt Margie later told me the porch went so quiet you could hear a fly at the window screen. Then Judith said the most revealing thing she could have said. "You cannot do this to me. Not you cannot do this to Paige. Not you cannot do this to the family. To me." And Dorothy answered with a sadness so old it had gone past anger. "What have you done for 12 years except take what was not yours and tell stories about the wrong person taking it?" Judith tried to say Dorothy was confused. Tried to say I had manipulated her. Tried to say everyone was turning against her. Dorothy cut straight through it. "No, dear. You did that yourself at my birthday party in front of 60 people." Then Judith left. Screen door slamming. Gravel spraying under her tires. That should have been the end of it. In a city maybe it would have been. In Millbrook it was only the beginning. Because small towns do not move through official channels. They move through casseroles and parking lots and after-church conversations, and women lowering their voices while leaning over folding tables covered in sheet cake. By Friday every single person who had been at that party knew 3 things. The ring was fake. The watch was fake. And Dorothy had put the real house, and the real jewelry, and the real savings into a trust for Ember more than a decade earlier. I did not tell them. The story moved on its own. That is the part that still amazes me. I spent so much of my life thinking truth was helpless in my family unless someone fought for it loudly. But once enough people saw the crack in Judith's story, they did the rest themselves. The empty box became shorthand. Did you hear what Judith did? The one with the empty box. Oh, that Judith. The country club women stopped saving her a chair. Church friends smiled but stopped inviting her to lunch. Brandon's mother apparently had several very pointed questions for Paige about the family she was marrying into. Judith tried her usual move. Mom is old. Mom is confused. Ember manipulated her. But everyone at that party had seen Dorothy. Back straight. Eyes clear. Answering questions about Roosevelt and ration books and old addresses from memory sharper than people half her age. No one bought the confusion act. The image was too strong. A mother handing her own daughter an empty box while the room laughed. Some stories rewrite people permanently. That was one of them. The Saturday after the truth broke I drove to Dorothy's house and found her on the porch exactly where she always was. Same chair. Same tea. Same blanket over her knees. But she looked lighter somehow. Like she had been carrying a trunk alone up a long staircase, and had finally set it down. "How are you, baby?" "Still processing." She patted the chair beside her and I sat. "I do not want to use this against them, Grandma." "Then do not use it against them." She looked out over the yard. "Use it for yourself." "What does that mean?" "Come home." I laughed a little because I thought she meant visit more. She turned and looked at me like I was being intentionally dense. "I mean live here." "The house. The land. The 40 acres. It has been yours legally for 12 years. I stayed because I wanted to. But it needs younger hands now. And I would like to watch someone who loves it build something here before I go. Before I go. Those 4 words landed hard, but I did not let myself sit in them yet. I looked out at the fields. The barn. The cracked fence line. The overgrown side beds. The old pear trees. The slope behind the house that turned gold in late afternoon. My mind started racing before my heart caught up. My business had grown as much as it could in a studio apartment. Clients wanted to see materials in person. Walk sites. Experience scale. I had ideas I never had room to test. Demonstration gardens. Hardscape layouts. Native meadow plots. Seasonal beds. Workshops. 40 acres. You want me to build my life here? She smiled. I want you to stop building it in a corner. I went home and sat with that for 3 days. Then I gave notice on my apartment. 2 weeks later I was on Dorothy's porch in old jeans with a paintbrush in one hand, and a 5-gallon bucket of soft gray paint at my feet. Quietude. That was the color. I still remember because it sounded like a joke and a blessing at the same time. I repainted the railings. Repaired fence posts. Cleaned gutters. Cut back the dead growth by the sidewalk. Planted peonies along the front path because Dorothy loves peonies, and because I wanted something rooted and extravagant and impossible to ignore blooming where so much had gone unsaid. She sat in her chair and watched me work. Sometimes she gave advice. Sometimes she just watched. Sometimes I would look up and catch her smiling in that quiet, satisfied way that made me feel 6 years old and safe. Judith hired a lawyer. Of course she did. Some litigator from the next county whose first letter used so many aggressive phrases it practically smelled like stale cologne. Manipulation. Undue influence. Elder abuse. Fraud. Callaway answered with documentation. Trust papers. Capacity evaluation. Transfer records. Timeline. Judith tried another lawyer. Same result. There was nothing to contest. The trust was solid. The timing was solid. The evidence was solid. The only thing that had ever been shaky was Judith's assumption that no one had ever prepared for her. Then Callaway sent a cease and desist letter. 4 paragraphs. Precise enough to cut glass. Any further harassment or defamatory statements about Dorothy or the trust's beneficiary would be addressed through appropriate legal channels. Paige texted me that evening. Mom got a letter from Grandma's lawyer. She has not spoken in an hour. That was the first time in my life I could remember my mother being quiet because she had no move left. A month later Judith called and asked to meet. Neutral ground. Murphy's Cafe. I almost said no. Not because I was afraid. Because I was tired of being asked to show up for conversations where the other person had already decided reality in advance. But I went. She was there before me. Gray sweater. No pearls. No armor. Stirring coffee she was not drinking. She looked smaller somehow. Not softer. Just smaller. Like the story she had built around herself had collapsed, and she had not realized how much of her shape came from standing inside it. I sat down. Ordered tea. Waited. I did what I thought was best for the family, she said. Mom, stop. She blinked. I am not here to argue about the past. I am not here to help you make this sound smaller than it was. You meant to hurt me. You did it publicly. And you spent years preparing people to think I deserved it. She looked down at her cup. I never meant. I held up my hand. Do not. Not unless you are ready to be honest. The word honest sat there between us like something unfamiliar. I am not carrying this anger forever, I said. It is too heavy and it belongs with the person who made it. If you ever want a relationship with me, then it starts with the truth. Not revision. Not spin. Truth. For the first time in my life, my mother had no comeback. No correction. No elegant cruelty. Nothing. I left money for both drinks and walked out. That was not forgiveness. It was boundary. And sometimes those two things look similar from far away. Paige called one Wednesday night and cried before she got through hello. Do you know how embarrassing this is? I let the silence hold. I showed that ring to Brandon's parents. His mother held it up to the light and said, "What a beautiful stone," and it was glass ember. Glass. I am sorry, Paige. Did you know before I went to the jeweler? I found out the same week you did. A few days earlier. And you did not tell me. Would you have believed me? Long silence. Then no. No, I would not have. There it was. The first clean, honest sentence my sister had given me in years. She said she needed time. I said take it. 3 days later she texted. I am not ready to talk, but I am starting to see things I did not want to see before. That was not reconciliation. But it was a beginning. A true one. I deleted the voicemail after that. Not because Paige deserved mercy. Because I did not want to keep carrying proof of the moment she laughed at me. At some point even evidence becomes weight. Grant did not call. Grant drove. 3 weeks after the jewelry unraveling, his truck pulled up at the Harmon house while I was dividing hostess near the front walk. He sat in the cab for almost a minute before getting out. Then he walked to the porch and sat on the steps like a boy who had forgotten how to enter his own childhood home. I pulled off my gloves and sat beside him. He had the watch in his hand. The fake one. The horologist said $40. Yeah. He turned it over. Watch the light hit the cheap metal. I always knew Mom treated you differently, he said. I just did not want to get in the middle. I know. No defense. No speech. Just that. We sat there a while. Then he said something that finally made me look at him. I think silence is not neutral. I think I just wanted it to be. That was the closest thing to an apology my brother had ever given me. And strange as it sounds, it was enough for that moment. He picked up a paintbrush I had left on the porch and finished one section of railing without being asked. We did not talk about childhood. We did not talk about the party. We did not call it healing. But when he left, the brush was clean, and the railing was done, and somehow that felt honest in a way big dramatic apologies never do. Fall came in slowly, then all at once. The afternoon shortened. The maples along the drive turned orange and red. Dorothy started napping more. Eating less. Moving from porch to armchair by noon when the air cooled. One evening I brought her tea and sat beside her while the fields darkened and the peonies had already given way to late-season color. Russian sage. Hydrangea. Lavender still hanging on in the borders. She reached for my hand. I gave it. I held on long enough to make sure you would be okay, she said. Grandma. Let me finish. Her fingers tightened around mine. For 12 years I waited to see you on this porch looking like you belong here. Because you do. You always did. My throat closed. You did not just make me okay. You made me feel seen. She smiled, that soft, fierce smile she gets when love and practicality meet in the same place. You were always worth everything, baby. I just made sure the paperwork agreed. We both laughed then. And cried. Sometimes those are the same sound. What do I do now, I asked. You live. She looked out at the garden. You plant things. You let them grow. And you stop waiting for your mother to see what I have always seen. Some people cannot. That does not mean what they are missing is not there. That might be the single most important sentence anyone has ever said to me. Because my whole life until then had been arranged around one impossible hope. That if I worked hard enough, explained clearly enough, stayed gentle enough, proved enough, one day Judith would look at me and see what Dorothy saw. She would not. Maybe she could not. And once I finally understood that I got free in a way the trust money never could have done. 6 months later the house looked different. Not renovated into something fancy. Loved back into itself. The porch railings soft gray with white trim. The gutters clean. The front walk lined with peonies and lavender. The old barn converted into my studio with drafting tables and stone samples, and a wall of client photos and plant boards and scale models spread out under good light. I started hosting clients on the property. Walking them through the land. Showing them drainage solutions in real time. Demonstration beds. Native meadow sections. Seasonal succession planning. Business doubled. Then doubled again. I hired a part-time assistant named Maya from the community college. Horticulture student. Smart hands. Good eye. As hungry for real work as I had been at her age. The empty box sits on my mantel above the fireplace. Open. Not hidden. Not framed like a trophy. Just there. Worn velvet. Hollow center. The thing that was meant to humiliate me became the object that led me home. Dorothy still lived in the house then. Slower now. Using the chairlift I installed on the stairs. Sometimes eating in the kitchen when it was too cool for the porch. But every evening if the weather allowed she would sit outside and watch me work. That image is still stitched into me. My grandmother in her chair. Blanket on her knees. Watching me move through the yard she protected for me long before I knew it. Paige started calling. Short conversations at first. Careful ones. She asked me when to cut peonies back. Asked me what to plant near a west-facing fence. We did not talk about the ring. Not yet. But the fact that she was asking me for anything real felt like a small bridge being laid down board by board. Grant came by once a month. He helped install drainage pipe. Fixed a gate hinge. Brought coffee one Saturday and said nothing much at all. Sometimes that was enough. Judith did not call. Then one Tuesday I found a card in the mailbox. No return address. No signature. Just 4 words in my mother's handwriting. I should have known. That was it. Not I am sorry. Not I was wrong. I should have known. I stood on the porch holding that card and trying to decide whether it was confession, or self-pity, or the closest thing my mother would ever come to honesty. In the end I framed it anyway. Not because it redeemed her. Because it completed the story. On one wall by the front door hangs Dorothy's note. Everything real is already in your name. On another shelf sits my mother's box. Empty. One woman built something for me in silence. The other tried to reduce me in public. Between those 2 objects is the whole map of my life. Now I need to tell you the part that hurts the most. And the part that healed the most. Because this story is not really about the money. Not really about the house. Not even about the ring, and the watch and the fakes and the trust and the lawyers. It is about what happens to a person who spends years being told directly or indirectly that they are too much and not enough at the same time. Too difficult. Too sensitive. Too suspicious. Too emotional. Too inconvenient. And then one day somebody places proof in their hand that says no. You were not difficult. You were accurate. You were not greedy. You were seeing clearly. You were not too much. You were the only one telling the truth in a room full of people who found lies more comfortable. That kind of proof reaches backward. It does not just change your future. It changes your past. It touches every memory and says maybe you were never crazy. Maybe you were just alone. The hardest part for me was understanding that Dorothy had loved me like this all along. Not softly. Not vaguely. Not in that helpless way people sometimes mean when they say love. She loved me with strategy. With documents. With witnesses. With timing. With patience. With a bank key in my palm and 7 words under a table at exactly the moment I needed them most. People talk about inheritance like it is a list of assets. House. Jewelry. Savings. Land. That is the shallow version. Real inheritance is this. Someone saw you clearly and chose to protect your future from the thing that was trying to shrink you. Even when it cost them. Even when they had to wait. Even when the person hurting you was their own child. I used to think being loved meant being chosen openly and loudly. Now I know sometimes the deepest love works in silence for years and reveals itself only when the damage is about to become permanent. If you are the person in your family who gets the empty box, then I need you to hear me right now. Look closer. I am serious. Look closer. Sometimes the loudest people are not the most powerful. They are just the most visible. Sometimes the person everyone dismisses as quiet is the one moving pieces you cannot even see yet. Sometimes the one who says the least is the one doing the most. And sometimes the thing that looks like humiliation is actually the door to the truth finally opening. My mother gave me an empty box in front of 60 people. My grandmother gave me 7 words under the table. One gift was designed to break me. The other was designed to set me free. And the second one did. There is one more thing I want to say before I end this. For years I believed I mattered only in private. That maybe Dorothy loved me but the world had already agreed with Judith. That maybe family had voted and I had lost. That maybe the best I could hope for was one person quietly reassuring me while the rest of the room looked away. I was wrong. Dorothy did not just reassure me. She changed the ground beneath me. She made the world catch up to the truth. That is why the ending hits me the way it does. Not because I inherited almost $2 million. Not because I got the house. Not because the fake ring was exposed. Not because my mother finally lost face. Those things mattered. But they were not the heart of it. The heart of it was this. For 12 years while I thought I was surviving on scraps of love, my grandmother was building me a future sturdy enough to stand on. And when the moment came, she did not stand up in the ballroom and make a speech. She slipped me a note. Because she knew I did not need spectacle. I needed certainty. Everything real is already in your name. I touch the frame every morning on my way out the door. Some days I read it fast. Some days I let each word land. Everything. Not some. Not the leftovers. Not the fake things people pass around to perform family. Real. Not the props. Not the stage dressing. Already. Done. Secured. Before the party. Before the humiliation. Before I even knew to ask. In your name. Mine. Because someone decided I was worth protecting, and then spent 12 years proving it in the most solid language the world has. Action. If no one has told you today that you matter, then let me be very clear. You matter. Even if the people who should have said it first are the ones who made you doubt it. You matter. Even if you got the empty box while everyone else got applause. You matter. Even if the truth is moving slower than you can stand. You matter. And sometimes the reason you are still here is because somebody somewhere is doing quiet work you cannot see yet. That is my story. Now I want yours. If you have ever been the empty box person in your family, then tell me in the comments. Tell me what happened. Tell me whether somebody saw you in the end. Tell me whether you are still waiting. I read those stories and I carry them with me. And if this story stayed with you, then do 3 things right now. Like the video so more people who need it can find it. Subscribe because I have more stories exactly like this, and the next one is even wilder. And comment the words empty box if you made it all the way to the end, so I know who stayed for the whole truth. And if this hit you hard, then share it with one person who needs to hear it tonight. Because sometimes one story at the right time can give somebody back their footing. I will see you in the next one.